Have you ever felt invisible? Like your best ideas, your deepest convictions, were met with a polite nod, a nervous smile, and then nothing? Like you were a spark in a damp room, constantly told that catching fire was simply too risky? Freya Nilsson knew that feeling intimately. For years, she'd navigated the polished but stagnant corridors of a marketing firm in Hamburg, a place where innovation went to die a quiet death under layers of bureaucracy and fear. She was brilliant, sharp, her mind a constantly churning engine of fresh concepts, daring campaigns, and forward-thinking strategies that could genuinely move brands forward. But she worked for Klaus Weber. Klaus was not a bad man, not intentionally cruel. He was simply afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of the unknown, most of all, afraid of failure. His office was a fortress built of caution tapes and what-if scenarios. Every pitch Freya brought to him, brimming with data, potential, and a genuine understanding of the shifting market, was met with the same weary sigh, the same pursed lips. Too bold, Freya. We must protect the brand's integrity. It's an interesting concept, but the stakeholders wouldn't approve. Too much risk involved. Let's stick to what we know, what's safe. Reliability is key in this market, not flashy experiments. He'd pat her shoulder patronizingly, or sometimes just wave her away, his eyes already drifting back to spreadsheets detailing minute, incremental gains. Freya would leave his office, the heavy oak door closing behind her like a tombstone, carrying her carefully prepared decks, her vibrant mock-ups, her detailed projections. Feeling the familiar weight of discouragement settle over her. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the feeling of being fundamentally misunderstood, of having a vital part of herself systematically dismissed as impractical or dangerous. She saw the market evolving, saw competitors embracing the very strategies Klaus feared, and felt a deep ache of wasted potential, not just her own, but the firm's. Each dismissed idea was a small death, a vibrant possibility smothered before it could breathe. The office itself seemed to embody Klaus's philosophy: muted colors, predictable layouts, a quiet hum of monotonous work. There was competence, certainly, a steady ship sailing a well-charted course, but Freya longed for the open sea, for the thrill of charting new territory. She tried, she really did. She refined her pitches, anticipated his objections, brought even more data. It didn't matter. The fear was a constant, an impenetrable wall. It wasn't personal, Klaus would assure her. It was just good business sense. But to Freya, it felt deeply personal. Her ideas weren't just business strategies. They were expressions of how she saw the world, how she believed connection and engagement truly worked. To have them consistently labeled too risky felt like a judgment on her own perception, her own worth. The air in the office felt thick with unspoken no's. It was a place that valued conformity over creativity, safety over progress. Freya, with her restless, innovative spirit, felt like a bird trapped in a cage, her wings useless against the solid bars of caution. She began to feel a dangerous numbness creeping in, the kind that comes from repeatedly suppressing your true nature. The frustration built, a quiet, simmering rage that she kept hidden beneath a veneer of professional composure. She attended meetings, contributed to safe projects, and watched as opportunities were missed, market shifts ignored, all in the name of mitigating risk. It was soul-crushing. She started staying late, not to work on approved projects, but to pore over her rejected ideas, keeping them alive in the quiet of the empty office after Klaus and the others had left. It was a form of defiance, a secret rebellion against the stifling status quo. The glow of her laptop screen in the dark office felt like a small spotlight on a hidden stage, where her true work could exist, if only for a few stolen hours. But keeping them alive wasn't enough. The energy they contained needed an outlet, a place to grow and thrive. The idea began to form, not fully fleshed out, but a persistent whisper in the back of her mind. What if the cage wasn't the only place she could fly? What if the ideas Klaus rejected weren't the end, but a beginning somewhere else? The thought was terrifying, exhilarating. It felt like stepping off a cliff, but the ground she was standing on felt less and less stable every day. The air in Klaus's office grew heavier, the silence louder. Each rejected idea added another brick to the wall around her, not built by Klaus alone, but cemented by her own compliance. She saw the path laid out before her at the firm, slow, steady, predictable, and utterly devoid of the passion that had drawn her to marketing in the first place. It was a gilded cage, perhaps, offering security, but at the cost of her creative soul. The thought of spending another year, another 5, living this suppressed existence, felt unbearable. The risk of leaving, of trying something new, suddenly seemed less daunting than the slow, certain death of her spirit within the firm. The decision crystallized not in a moment of sudden inspiration, but through the cumulative weight of endless rejections. It was born of exhaustion and a deep, primal need to simply breathe. She would not let her ideas die. She would build them a home herself. The decision solidified into quiet resolve. Freya wouldn't fight the wall anymore. She would build her own path around it. The rejected campaigns, the dismissed strategies, the too risky concepts, these weren't failures, they were blueprints. Blueprints for something new, something entirely hers. The first step was secrecy. Klaus and the firm represented the comfortable, cautious world she needed to escape from, and alerting them to her plans prematurely felt like handing them the tools to stop her. Her work became a clandestine operation, squeezed into the margins of her demanding day job. Early mornings before the office came alive, late nights long after it had emptied, weekends swallowed whole by research, planning, and execution. Her small apartment transformed into a war room. Notes were tacked to walls, whiteboards filled with complex diagrams, spreadsheets glowed on her laptop screen late into the night. The energy was different now. It wasn't the forced enthusiasm of presenting to a skeptical boss, it was the raw, potent fuel of conviction. Every hour spent felt meaningful. Every challenge she overcame in building her own brand was a small victory against the forces of inertia she'd battled for so long. She revisited each rejected idea, not with bitterness, but with fresh eyes, refining them, adapting them for a different context, her context. The campaign built around authentic, unpolished, user-generated content that Klaus had called too unpredictable. It became the core of her new brand's engagement strategy, focusing on raw, genuine connection. The plan for a disruptive pricing model that Klaus deemed unstable, it was reimagined as a transparent, customer-centric approach that built trust. The vision for a visually bold, unconventional website that Klaus dismissed as not corporate enough. It became the vibrant, unique online presence that immediately set her apart. This secret world was a vibrant contrast to the muted reality of her day job. During the day, she was the diligent, competent employee, navigating the predictable routines, sitting in beige meeting rooms, listening to discussions about mitigating risk. Her expression was calm, her contributions measured and safe. But beneath the surface, her mind was buzzing, constantly problem-solving for her other life, spotting opportunities, strategizing, building. She became adept at compartmentalizing, her two worlds existing side by side, never touching. The loneliness was sometimes profound. She couldn't share her excitement, her fears, her small triumphs with colleagues. They wouldn't understand, or worse, they might inadvertently jeopardize her secret. Her family and friends saw her working harder than ever, often canceling plans, looking tired but also possessing a new, unnameable spark in her eyes. She offered vague explanations about a big project at work, pouring her social energy into online communities related to startups and marketing innovation, finding connection with strangers who spoke her language of ambition and disruption. There were moments of doubt, dark nights where the sheer scale of the undertaking felt overwhelming. The financial strain, the lack of a safety net, the constant pressure of maintaining the facade, it all weighed heavily. Was she foolish? Was Klaus right? Was she risking everything for ideas that were fundamentally flawed? These doubts were the echoes of Klaus's voice, insidious whispers of caution trying to penetrate her resolve. But then she would look at what she was building, see the potential taking shape, and the fire would reignite. This wasn't just about proving Klaus wrong, it was about proving herself right. It was about giving her creativity the space it deserved. She learned new skills out of necessity: web development basics, accounting, legal jargon, project management on a shoestring budget. Every obstacle was a lesson, every setback a redirection. The initial concept of building a brand evolved into building a full-fledged startup, piece by painstaking piece. She chose a name that felt bold and forward-looking, designed a logo that was anything but beige, and crafted a mission statement that was a direct rebuttal to the risk-averse philosophy she was escaping. It was a marathon run in secret, fueled by passion and a desperate need for validation that went beyond a salary or a job title. She wasn't just building a business, she was building an escape route, a future defined by her own vision, not someone else's limitations. The irony wasn't lost on her, using the very energy and ideas that were stifled in her day job to create the means to leave it behind. It was a powerful, personal revolution taking place in the quiet corners of her life, hidden in plain sight. The contrast between her two existences became sharper, almost comical at times. Sitting in a dull corporate meeting discussing a safe, uninspired marketing plan, while her phone silently buzzed in her pocket with an email from a potential client excited about her startup's bold approach. Nodding along to Klaus's pronouncements on the importance of caution, while her mind was already miles away, planning the next move for her own burgeoning venture. She was living a double life, and the secret world was growing stronger, more real, than the one she inhabited during business hours. The tipping point was coming. She could feel it, the moment where the secret life would have to emerge into the light. The months of clandestine work began to yield tangible results. It started small. A few initial clients, found through persistent networking in her limited free time and online forums, took a chance on her startup. They weren't big corporations with deep pockets, but smaller businesses, hungry for fresh ideas, willing to embrace the very strategies Klaus had deemed too risky. And they worked. The authentic content campaigns generated genuine engagement. The transparent pricing model built immediate trust and loyalty. The bold visual identity attracted attention in a crowded market. Freya watched with growing excitement as her concepts, the ones that had been dismissed as impractical fantasies, proved their worth in the real world. The early successes weren't massive, not enough to quit her job yet, but they were proof of concept, vital validation that fueled her tireless efforts. The energy she drew from seeing her ideas succeed was intoxicating, a stark contrast to the draining nature of her day job. At the firm, she continued to perform her duties diligently, maintaining the facade, but her heart and mind were increasingly focused on her startup. The meetings felt more tedious, Klaus's cautious pronouncements more hollow. She saw their stagnation with painful clarity, knowing she held the key to unlocking potential they were too afraid to grasp. The dual life was exhausting, physically and emotionally. There were times she felt stretched thin, on the verge of cracking. The pressure of keeping her secret, the demands of two full-time endeavors, the constant background hum of anxiety, it took its toll. But the alternative, remaining in the cage, felt like a slow surrender. The small victories acted like lifeboats, keeping her afloat in the turbulent waters of her dual existence. A positive testimonial from an early client, a small but significant increase in engagement metrics, a referral to a new potential customer, these were the breadcrumbs that led her forward. Her confidence grew, quiet but unshakable. She wasn't just executing ideas anymore, she was leading, making decisions, shaping a vision from the ground up. She was discovering capabilities she didn't know she had, fueled by the necessity of doing everything herself. The startup became more than just a side project, it was her true work, her authentic professional identity. The person who sat at her desk at the firm felt increasingly like a shadow, while the person who worked late into the night building her brand felt real and alive. The financial situation remained precarious. Every penny earned by the startup was reinvested. Her personal savings dwindled. The risk was ever present. What if the traction stalled? What if a major client defaulted? What if the market shifted unexpectedly? These were the what-ifs that kept her awake at night, the practical risks that felt far more tangible than the abstract fears Klaus harbored. Yet the fear was different now. It wasn't the fear of being told her ideas were bad, it was the fear of her execution failing, a fear tied to action and consequence, not just dismissal. It felt healthier somehow, a productive fear that spurred her to work harder and smarter. She started to gain recognition, albeit within the smaller circles her startup operated in. People in the startup community started to know her name, to talk about the innovative campaigns her company was running. Invitations to speak on small panels, requests for interviews for industry blogs, these external validations reinforced that she was on the right path. It was a stark contrast to her anonymity at the firm, where her contributions were subsumed into the collective, risk-averse output. The moment she fully embraced the reality of her two lives was subtle. She was in a meeting at the firm, listening to a lengthy, cautious debate about a minor campaign detail, when her phone buzzed with an urgent email from her startup, a real problem requiring immediate, decisive action. In that moment, the contrast hit her with full force, the triviality of the firm's concerns against the vital, urgent reality of her own business. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was something she had built, something that relied on her completely. The balance had shifted. Her startup wasn't just a secret project, it was her primary focus, the firm, the side hustle that paid the bills while she built her future. The time was approaching when the side hustle would have to end. The European Marketing Awards, the premier event in the industry, a glittering showcase of the year's best and most innovative campaigns. For years, Freya had watched from the sidelines, attending the gala dinners with colleagues from the firm, always hoping that their work, the work she had contributed to, might one day be recognized. But the firm's safe, predictable campaigns rarely, if ever, made the shortlist. They were competent, but never groundbreaking. This year was different. Her startup, her hidden gem born from rejected ideas, had achieved something remarkable. It had run a campaign that was so unconventional, so impactful, that it had started generating buzz beyond the niche community she had initially targeted. The results were undeniable, the kind of data that screamed success in a language even the most cautious executive could understand. Encouraged by the campaign's performance and the growing recognition, Freya had submitted it for consideration at the European Marketing Awards, entering under her startup's name. It felt like a long shot, pitting her small, independent venture against established agencies and corporate giants with vast resources. But she knew the work was good. It represented everything Klaus had feared: bold, authentic, disruptive, and it had worked. The submission process itself felt like an act of defiance, a direct challenge to the too risky narrative. It was her truth, laid bare for the industry to judge, free from Klaus's cautious filtering. She didn't tell anyone at the firm about the submission. It was another layer of her secret life, perhaps the most significant one yet. The notification email, arriving late one evening, was almost anticlimactic after months of intense work. Her startup was a finalist. A wave of disbelief, followed by sheer elation, washed over her. She reread the email multiple times, tears blurring the words. This wasn't just recognition for a campaign. It was validation for the entire journey, for every late night, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt she had pushed through. It was validation for her ideas, the ones that had been deemed unworthy. The award ceremony was scheduled for a few weeks later in a grand hall in Berlin. Attending felt imperative, a necessary culmination of her secret journey. She arranged to take a day of leave from the firm, citing a personal appointment. Klaus, ever oblivious to her life outside the office, approved it without question. The days leading up to the event were a blur of anticipation and nerves. She was excited beyond measure, but also acutely aware of the potential implications. What if she won? How would she explain it? More importantly, how would Klaus react? The thought of him seeing her on that stage, receiving an award for work he had indirectly inspired through his rejection, filled her with a complex mix of emotions: triumph, vindication, and a surprising absence of bitterness. The anger had dissipated, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of having built something real and successful on her own terms. The night of the awards arrived. Freya dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that felt confident and celebratory, a stark contrast to the muted professionalism she maintained at the firm. As she walked into the opulent award hall, the air crackled with energy, a stark difference from the quiet hum of her office building. Marketing leaders, innovators, and agencies from across Europe mingled, the atmosphere a vibrant celebration of creativity and strategic thinking. She felt a moment of imposter syndrome, a fleeting return to the feeling of being overlooked. But then she remembered the work she had done, the results she had achieved, and she stood taller. She found her seat, one among hundreds, a single figure from her secret world entering the public sphere. And then she saw him. Across the room, sitting with a group of colleagues from their firm, was Klaus Weber. He looked exactly the same: conservative suit, cautious demeanor, a slight air of being somewhere he felt obligated to be rather than genuinely wanting to be. The sight of him sent a jolt through her. He was still there, still operating within the same confines, while she was here, on the precipice of something entirely new. The dramatic irony of the moment was almost overwhelming. He had no idea why she was truly here, no idea that the work being celebrated might be hers. The awards ceremony began, a series of presentations and speeches. Freya watched, a knot of anticipation tightening in her stomach. Her category was announced towards the end of the evening, one of the most prestigious awards recognizing innovative campaigns. The tension in the room became palpable. The presenter took the stage, the envelope containing the winner's name held aloft. Freya held her breath, her heart pounding. Years of frustration, secret work, and unwavering belief had led to this moment. The presenter spoke, listing the nominees, showcasing snippets of their campaigns on the large screens. Freya saw her work flash before her eyes, vibrant, unconventional, alive. It looked so different from the safe, predictable campaigns she was used to seeing from established firms, including her own. There was a pause, a moment of heightened anticipation that stretched into an eternity. The presenter smiled, ripped open the envelope. And the European Marketing Award for Innovation goes to. The name of her startup echoed through the hushed hall. Freya froze, momentarily stunned. It was real. She had won. A wave of pure, unadulterated triumph washed over her, followed by a sudden, intense awareness of where she was and who was in the room. The people around her were clapping, some turning to look at her, recognizing her name or perhaps the name of her startup. She stood up on shaky legs, a disbelieving smile spreading across her face. As she made her way towards the stage, navigating the rows of chairs, her eyes scanned the crowd. And there he was, Klaus. He was sitting forward, his expression one of utter confusion, eyebrows furrowed. He seemed to be trying to place the name of the startup, then his gaze fell on her, walking towards the stage. His eyes widened slightly, his jaw slackened. Disbelief warred with recognition on his face. The woman who had worked under him for years, whose boldest ideas he had consistently dismissed as too risky, was walking onto the most prestigious stage in European marketing to accept an award for innovation. The dramatic irony of the moment was complete, powerful, and utterly satisfying. Freya didn't feel a desire to gloat, not truly. The victory itself was the statement. Her success was built on the very foundation he had rejected. It wasn't about making him feel small, it was about her finally standing tall. As she walked, she felt the weight of every suppressed idea, every frustrated sigh, every late night lift from her shoulders. The stage felt like a beacon, the culmination of a long, silent journey. The applause grew louder as she reached the steps. She ascended them, the lights of the stage warm on her face. She accepted the award, a heavy, gleaming testament to her perseverance. She stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, seeing not just the industry's elite, but also, distinctly, the stunned face of Klaus Weber in the crowd. It was a moment of profound vindication, not just professionally, but personally. She had refused to let her light be dimmed, refused to accept the limitations placed upon her. She had built her own platform, brick by painstaking brick, out of the very materials others had discarded. The microphone was live. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. This wasn't just an acceptance speech, it was a declaration. A declaration of the value of courage, of the power of embracing risk, of the potential that lies dormant when fear dictates decisions. Her voice was clear, strong, carrying across the hall. She didn't need to name names, didn't need to explicitly call anyone out. The story itself, her presence on that stage, spoke volumes. She held the award, a symbol of the hidden gem finally unearthed, polished, and recognized for its true worth. Klaus, watching from the crowd, was a silent witness to the future he had unknowingly helped create by refusing to be a part of it. The cage hadn't held her, it had simply forced her to build her own wings. Standing on the stage, award in hand, Freya felt a surge of emotion so powerful it threatened to overwhelm her. This moment wasn't just about a single award. It was the validation of a philosophy, the triumph of a mindset. She looked out at the assembled leaders of the marketing world, and though she saw Klaus, her message wasn't directed at him, but for everyone who had ever felt unheard or underestimated. Her voice, initially trembling slightly, grew steady as she began to speak. "Thank you. This is unexpected and deeply meaningful." She paused, gathering her thoughts. The bright stage lights a stark contrast to the muted office she had left behind just hours ago. This campaign, the one being honored tonight, was built on ideas that were once deemed too risky, concepts that were seen as liabilities, potential threats to stability. Her gaze didn't linger on Klaus, but swept across the room, a quiet power emanating from her. For a long time, I believed that risk was the enemy. I saw how it was avoided, how caution was prioritized above all else. But I learned something important on this journey. True risk isn't in trying and potentially failing. True risk is in not trying, in staying stagnant out of fear. It's in letting potential wither because you're afraid of the wind. Her words were simple, direct, imbued with the hard-won wisdom of her experience. They weren't just business platitudes, they were truths forged in the fire of frustration and resilience. Innovation doesn't happen in comfort zones. Growth doesn't come from repeating the past. It comes from embracing the unknown, from believing in the power of bold ideas, even when others call them naive or impossible. She spoke of the passion that drives creativity, the need to trust intuition alongside data, and the fundamental human desire to connect in authentic ways, the very principles her winning campaign embodied. "This award is a testament to the incredible team who believed in this vision with me," she said, acknowledging her small but dedicated team who had joined her on the startup journey. "But it's also a testament to anyone who has ever been told their ideas are too big, their dreams too ambitious. Don't let fear be the architect of your future. Your perspective, your unique voice, your willingness to challenge the status quo. These are not risks, they are your greatest assets." She held the award aloft, a symbol not just of her achievement, but of a broader message. "To the gatekeepers of caution," she continued, her voice clear and strong, "understand that in trying to protect everything, you risk losing the opportunity to gain something truly extraordinary. And to those standing outside the gates, holding on to your unconventional ideas, find your space, build your own door if you must. The world is waiting for what you have to offer. The applause that followed was thunderous, a standing ovation from many in the room. It was more than just appreciation for a good speech. It was recognition of the truth in her words, the raw honesty of her journey. She stepped down from the stage, award in hand, the weight of it a comforting presence. She had walked onto that stage as the overlooked strategist from a cautious firm. She walked off as a recognized leader, an innovator, a woman who had built her own success against the odds. She glanced towards where Klaus was sitting. He hadn't joined the standing ovation. He was still sitting there, his face pale, his eyes fixed on her. There was no anger, only a profound, almost bewildered silence. The cage he had helped build hadn't held her. It had merely been the catalyst for her to find her wings. Freya Nilsson, the hidden gem, was hidden no longer. She had stepped into the light, and the light was brilliant. So, have you ever felt invisible? Have your dreams been called too risky? Remember, Freya, your potential isn't defined by those who fear its light. Sometimes, the greatest risk is not taking one at all. Find your voice, build your platform, and let your too risky ideas take flight. Don't wait for permission. Build your own stage. And when you get there, look out into the crowd. The people who doubted you might just be watching. Share this story. Remind someone that their too risky idea might just be their winning one. Comment below if you've ever felt like your potential was overlooked. Let's build a community that believes in the power of the hidden gems among us.